Number 1. Which characteristic do all living organisms show? So there are 7 characteristics that all living things share or have. So it's called Mrs. Gran, of course. You guys should know this. So movement, respiration, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, and nutrition. My bad. So, obviously, the answer is excretion, B. Number 2. Using the binomial naming system, the Arctic fox is called Vulpes lagopus. Which row is correct? So, according to the naming system, so called binomial naming system, it consists of 2 things: genus and species. The first name derives from genus, the second comes from the species. So, obviously, the answer is B here. Mind you, kingdom is the top of the criteria, or let's say classification level. So the classification level goes from kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. So this is the biggest, that's the biggest group, or the largest group of the classification level, and it goes downwards. So anyways, the answer is B. Number 3. What is a characteristic of both insects and arachnids? So insects and arachnids are both arthropods. They have a common factor, or common feature, my bad. The common feature is called exoskeleton. So different from us, they have skeletons outside their body, whereas we have skeletons inside our body, so under the skin. And there are few things that they do have in common. Something that I can think of right now is probably the jointed legs. So things like, if this is the body of the insects or arachnids, they have legs, jointed legs like this. So there's a joint, or there are joints here. Three pairs of legs only belongs to the insects, because arachnids have 8 legs. Wings only belong to insects, not arachnids. So arachnids are like spiders or scorpions. So the answer is C. Number 4. What characteristics can be found in both plant and animal cells? So plants and animals, their cells have a lot of differences. and a lot of similarities as well. Actually, it's not that big. So they both have nucleus, which contains DNA and controls the cell activity. They both have rough ER, ribosomes, cytoplasm, mitochondria, and the cell membrane, and so on. However, only plants have cell walls, chloroplasts, and large vacuole. So A is not the answer, B also has cell walls, so it's not the answer as well. C has chloroplasts, so nope. D is the answer since it says it has cell membranes and nuclei. So they both have nuclei and the cell membrane. Or cell membranes, okay? So the answer is D. Question 5. The actual thickness of the leaf shown in the diagram is 2000 micrometers, but its thickness in the diagram is 50 millimeters. What is the magnification of the diagram? Okay, so in order to solve this problem, you have to know the formula, which is magnification is image size over actual size. So magnification is image size over actual size. So in order to solve this problem, simply you just have to put these values into where they belong. So that's the actual size, and this is obviously the image size. And the difference between the micrometers and the millimeters, so millimeters and micrometers, is 1,000. So millimeter is 1,000 times bigger than the micrometers. So 1 millimeter is 1,000 micrometers. So I'll just put the image size, which is the 50 millimeters here, 50 millimeters over 2,000 micrometers. So for the unit conversion, what you have to do is you just have to multiply 50 to 1,000 to make the unit the same. So it goes like this. So that's 50,000 micrometers over 2,000 micrometers. And obviously the answer should be then B, 25. Number 6. What is the function of a root hair cell? The function of a root hair cell is simple. Well, there are actually two functions, but in this case, you just have to know one. So the root hair cell has this funny-looking extension, and extension is there to increase the surface area. Okay, and by increasing the surface area, it can now absorb more water molecules, and minerals as well. Therefore, the function is absorption. Oh, good. Number 7. Which row describes osmosis? Osmosis is the movement of water molecules. So it's either A or B. And do we need energy for osmosis? No. Osmosis is a passive transport. So we don't need any energy for that. We only need energy for active transport. So the answer is already B. But let's have a look at the third one. This is the most important one. When we talk about osmosis, the osmosis only happens when there's a membrane. Okay, so the movement of water through a partially permeable membrane is osmosis. So movement of water from high water potential to low water potential through partially permeable membrane or permeable or semi-permeable membrane is called osmosis. If water moves from one place to another, not through the membrane, that's not called osmosis, okay? So, yes. The answer is B. Number 8. A student made the following statements about the movement of ions by active transport. So, number 1, it is a net movement of particles from low concentration to high concentration. That looks promising to me. Yes. Active transport is a movement of particles from low to high concentration, not high to low concentration. So, already C and D are not the answers. Number 3, it requires the use of energy from respiration. Yes, since it's an unnatural thing to happen, we actually need energy for that. So yes. So answer is A already, but let's look at 4. It can only take place in living things or living cells. Yes, it is possible for only living cells because living cells they have membrane. On the membrane, there are carrier proteins. So the carrier proteins are the ones that enable active transport to occur. So yes, living things can do the active transport, not the non-living things. So the answer is A. Question 9. A test was performed on a food substance. A positive result was shown by a color change to blue-black. So if there's a color change to blue-black, it must be iodine solution. So the solution that changed from something to blue-black is only iodine solution. Okay. And iodine solution is initially a yellow-brown. And then in the presence of starch, it changes into blue-black. So the answer is C for this one. The diagram shows an experiment on the digestion of protein in egg albumin. So this is a protein. Albumin is a protein in egg. And this digestion is done by protease. So protease is an enzyme that breaks down proteins. And the protease was taken from a human stomach. So human stomach has pH 2 because it has a lot of hydrochloric acids. And in which test tube would the protein be digested most quickly? So, when protease has to break down protein, and if the protease is from the human stomach, then it should have some hydrochloric acid at least. So answer is not A because this dilute Hydrochloric acids provide optimum pH for the proteases. And of course, you're gonna need protease, so B is not the answer. And it's either C or D, and the answer should be C, because if you boil an enzyme, it becomes denatured. It becomes denatured, and it just can't work. So the answer is C for this question. Number 11. The diagram represents enzyme action. What are parts W, X, and Y in this chemical reaction? So this should be an enzyme, and there should be a substrate. The shape of the substrate should fit into the shape of the active site in order to react. So W is the substrate, and the X is an enzyme, and the Y is the product. So the answer is B. Number 12. A student drew a diagram to show the substances used and produced in photosynthesis in a leaf. 1 plus 2 are used by the leaf. 3 plus 4 are produced by the leaf. So 1 and 2 are used by a leaf. For photosynthesis, what we need, what the plants need, of course, not we, my bad, are CO2 and water. And when they react together, they form glucose and oxygen. So glucose is C6H12O6. So 1 and 2 are, of course, carbon dioxide and water. So the answer is already B. And 3 and 4 are glucose molecules and oxygen molecules. So the answer is B. Number 13. The diagram shows a type of a plant cell. In which tissue is this cell found? So it specifically said it's a plant cell. So by looking at the shape of this plant cell, it's rectangular, and the answer should only be a palisade mesophyll, because first of all, it's rectangular shaped, and it has a lot of chloroplast, and palisade mesophyll cells present on top of the leaf. Or let's just draw, the leaf structure. Okay. Here's wax cuticle. And here is the upper epidermis. And here are the mesophyll layer. And top of the mesophyll layer consists of palisade mesophyll cells. And at the bottom, there are spongy mesophyll cells. And spongy cells or spongy mesophyll cells are not rectangular. They're more or less circular, or they're kind of irregular shaped. But for the palisade mesophyll cells, they are rectangular shaped, and they have a lot of chloroplasts because they need them for photosynthesis. I'm just gonna change the color into green because chloroplasts are green, because of the chlorophylls inside. The chlorophylls are green and they are inside the chloroplast. Therefore, chloroplast's color is green. So, as you can see, there are many chloroplasts and it's rectangular shaped. So, the answer should be palisade mesophyll. You can call it tissue because tissues are made of same type of cells. So, collectively called these cells make a structure called tissue. So it's called palisade mesophyll tissue. And this is palisade mesophyll cell. Number 14. the list shows some health problems or human health problems. So which problems can be caused by malnutrition? First one says chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, so COPD. The word pulmonary means it's related to the lungs. So number one is it's not caused by malnutrition because it actually is caused by many pollutants, like the smoke that comes from the cars and trucks and vehicles and the factories. They are the main problems. So number one is not correct. Number two is yes, constipation is caused by malnutrition. It's caused by lack of fibers. So if there's lack of fibers, then there's lack of peristalsis. So if there's lack of bowel movement, and the food molecules remain big, the size just remains to be big, and it causes the constipation. So number two is yes. Number three, coronary heart disease. So here, many students will wonder, okay, well, isn't coronary heart disease caused by having too much fat, like trans fat? Yes, it is, but it's also related with having a lack of proteins and energy. So if there's lack of proteins, then it can actually contribute to the development of coronary heart disease, because having less protein and less energy causes a proportional loss of skeletal and myocardial muscle. So the heart muscle becomes weaker if there's less protein, and that can cause the coronary heart disease. So 3 is yes. And number 4, obesity. And you might wonder, okay, well, I'm definitely sure that obesity is caused by having too much of something like fat and carbo. Yes, it is partially right as well. They are one of the main factors, of course, but yeah, both of them are actually main factors. But having malnutrition can actually cause obesity, because malnutrition is not just only having a lack of something. Obesity can actually happen from overconsumption of food, but it happens when there's overconsumption of food. They're high in calories. High in calories, but have low nutrient densities. So yes, this is still malnutrition, because you only had food that are in high calories but have low nutrient densities. So you're not having enough nutrients. So that's this part. Therefore, obesity is, yes, it's also caused by malnutrition. So the answer is C. This question was quite tricky, I would say. I mean, I think if there was an option, let's say if D did not have and 4, if D was like 2 only, then I'm pretty sure many students would have picked D, because this is the obvious one. Because the textbook says having lack of fiber can produce, or it can cause constipation, but it doesn't actually talk much about the coronary heart disease and obesity related to the malnutrition. So this question was, in a way, I think was quite evil, quite mean. Anyways, all good? Number 15. Cholera infection can cause the following events. Which sequence of events will cause diarrhea? So, when we talk about cholera, we have to talk about this bacteria. And the bacteria's name is
called, actually the name is called Vibrio cholerae. But you guys don't have to know the name of this bacteria because it's not actually included in the syllabus. So you guys can just ignore it. And when the Vibrio cholerae, when these bacteria are present in the small intestine, they secrete toxins. And these toxins, they interfere with chloride ion channels within small intestine. It causes those chloride ions to move out. Actually, let's say move in. They get released into the lumen of the small intestine. So this space within the small intestine is called lumen, or any tube space is called lumen. So when chloride ions go into the lumen, now the water potential becomes decreased because there are a lot of salts, a lot of chloride ions. So water potential becomes decreased, and then it causes the water molecules inside the small intestine to go into the lumen by osmosis, because relatively it has higher water potential than the lumen. So now there's full of water molecule as well as chloride ions, and these guys all just get out of the body through rectum, and that's called diarrhea. So the answer must have cholera bacteria producing toxin first, so it's either B or D. And then the toxin causes the chloride ions to go into the small intestine. So number one is the correct answer. So the answer is B. But let's have a look at the others. So let's have a look at what happens after that. So causing chloride ions to go into the small intestine causes the movement of chloride ions to go into the small intestine, and then it's going to lower the water potential, and then that causes the movement of water, which is called the osmosis. So it's 2, 1, and then 3, and then 5, 4. Yes, the correct answer is indeed B. All good? Number 16. Which food group is chemically digested in the mouth, passes through the stomach, and continues to be broken down by chemical digestion in the small intestine? So, in the mouth, the enzymes that are present in mouth is called amylase or amylases. Amylases break down starch into maltoses. And then maltoses become broken down into glucoses by maltases elsewhere, not in the mouth, but somewhere else. So amylases are the enzymes that are present in the mouth, and they break down the starch, which are the carbohydrates. So the answer is A. You don't even have to read the other parts because the enzyme that is present in the mouth is just amylases or amylase. So answer is A for this one. All good. Number 17. When stems with white flowers are cut and placed in a blue stain, the petals turn blue. Which tissue in stem does the stain travel through to reach the petals? So the white flower is cut. Let's say this is white flower. Of course, it's kind of red, but let's say it's white. And it's placed in blue stain. So it must be a blue solution, right? And then petals, and these petals will turn blue. This means the stain has traveled to the petals. So since the stain A is a solution. It's in the form of liquid. And the only pathway that the liquid travels through the plant is called xylem. So xylem transports water plus minerals or anything that's dissolved in water. The soluble substances. So the answer is D. Number 18. Which process releases water vapor into the atmosphere from the leaves of trees? So this is just the definition part. So definition of transpiration is the release of water vapor into the atmosphere from the leaves of trees through stomata. So stomata are holes underneath the leaf. So if this is the underneath part of the leaf, then there are small holes called stomata. And through these stomata, the water vapor travels out of the leaf. So hence the answer is D. Number 19. Mammals have a double circulation, which shows the correct sequence for the movement of blood in a mammal. So, the mammals have two chambers. The right side one and the left side one. So, the right side chamber receives, I'll just use blue color for this one, receives blood from the body. And then the blood goes into the heart and then goes to the lungs and then gets oxygenated, not deoxy, sorry, oxygenated. So receives oxygen from the lungs and then goes into the heart and then goes back to the body and delivers all the oxygen and nutrients, so on. My bad. So, as you can see, it travels from the body to the heart, and then to the lungs, and to the heart again, and then to the body, to the heart, to the lungs, and the heart again. So it just goes on and on and on. So, and the answer is A. B is not correct because it doesn't. The blood doesn't travel from the body to the lungs directly. It has to go to the heart. So nope. C is not correct as well because heart does pump the blood to the lungs, and then it does pump the blood back to the heart again. So nope. The D is not correct as well because the heart pumps the blood to the body, yes, but it doesn't pump blood to the heart. It pumps the blood, or actually, it delivers. The blood is delivered to the heart before the lungs. So the answer is A. The diagram shows a section through a blood vessel. Which type of blood vessel is shown and which direction does the blood flow? So this is called the valve. The valve has a function to prevent the blood backflow. So blood goes through the blood vessel, and then as soon as it tries to backflow, then the valves just closes, or the valves just close. Therefore, preventing the blood backflow, and it allows the movement of blood unidirectional. So the answer is obviously Q2P and only the vein contains valves, because veins have very low blood pressure. Not very low, let's say. I'll make a correction here. It's got relatively low pressured blood. So there's always a chance for the blood to just backflow. But for the arteries, as for the arteries, they have very high blood pressure. So there's no chance, there's no way that the blood will travel backwards because they have very high pressure. So the answer is D. The vein contains the valve, and the direction is Q2R. Answer is D. Thanks, guys. The antibodies that give immunity to disease can be acquired in the following different ways, which give active immunity. So, active immunity is the immunity that produces memory cells and antibodies. So the difference between passive immunity and active immunity is that the only active immunity produces antibodies and memory cells. Passive immunity, on the other hand, does not produce neither of them. So feeding on breast milk is not active immunity because the breast milk contains antibodies. So the babies acquire antibodies from their mother or from their mothers by feeding on breast milk. So 1 is not correct. So A and B and D is automatically not correct. So that leaves us with C. But if you look at 2 and 3, infection by disease. So when you get a disease, when you're infected with disease, then your body tries to overcome or cure the infection. And the infection means that you're attacked by the microorganisms. So one of the ways that we attack or kill microorganisms in our body is that by producing antibodies from the memory cells or the lymphocytes. So the lymphocytes are the cells that produce antibodies, and then when the war is done, when the war is over, some of them remain as memory cells. So yes, infection by disease does create active immunity, and vaccination is the artificial way of forming the lymphocytes or making lymphocytes that produces specific antibodies, which means it gives out the active immunity as well. So the answer is C in this case. Oh, good. Number 22. During physical activity, what stimulates the brain to increase the breathing rate? So during physical activity, there's going to be a lot of CO2s made and a lot of lactic acid made as well. So I wouldn't really talk about lactic acid here because none of the options actually have lactic acid. So I'm just going to concentrate in the oxygen and the carbon dioxide. After the activity, physical activity, there's going to be a lot of respiration done, so there's going to be a lot of CO2 made as well. And a lot of CO2 causes the blood to become acidic. Okay? And it's this acidified environment I wouldn't really call acidic blood, to be honest. I would say a lot of acid in the blood. And it's going to be this acid that changes the pH and then causes our brain to send a signal to breathe more in order to get rid of carbon dioxide. Otherwise, we're gonna stay, our internal environment will stay acidic. It actually will become more acidic if you don't take out the carbon dioxide. So it's C. The table shows some of the changes that occur during breathing. Which changes occur to cause inspiration? So when we inspire, which means when we breathe in, there are two muscles that contract. First one is called external intercostal muscle. Second one is diaphragm. And the internal intercostal muscles relax whenever external intercostal muscles contract. So they are called antagonistic muscles because they behave differently. They behave the exact opposite. So when you breathe in, they were initially relaxed and they become contracted. But internal intercostal muscles relax. So it's X, Y, R. The answer is C. Number 24. How many molecules of ethanol are released from the anaerobic respiration of one molecule of glucose? In order to solve this problem, you have to know that the anaerobic respiration happens in animals and yeast as well. In this case, it's talking about the ethanol. So you automatically have to think about the anaerobic respiration within the yeast. So the anaerobic respiration that happens in yeast produce ethanol and CO2 as a product or products. And as you can see from the equation, 1 mole of glucose molecule produces 2 moles of ethanols and also 2 moles of carbon dioxide. So the answer for this one is B. I strongly recommend you guys to memorize the chemical equation for the aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration, as well as photosynthesis. I mean, photosynthesis equation is very, very simple because, I mean, if you get to know, if you remember the aerobic respiration formula or the equation, then you automatically know the photosynthesis because the aerobic respiration is C6H12O6 plus 6O2 goes to 6CO2 plus 6. Oops, what is happening there? 6H2O. So if you just reverse the equation, that's photosynthesis. And if you just reverse it back, this is aerobic respiration, the chemical equation for the aerobic respiration. So only thing that you have to memorize is, of course, the anaerobic respiration chemical equation. And this is crucial. Well, these are both crucial. So I strongly recommend you guys to memorize both of them. Okay? All good, guys. The diagram shows a kidney and its blood vessels in a healthy person, which structure or structures transport glucose. So through artery, molecules go into the kidney. Small molecules actually go into the kidney. Things like glucose, amino acids, sodium, chloride ions, water, and urea, and etc. etc. The big things within the blood, such as red blood cells, white blood cells, and proteins, blood proteins, are not
excreted by the kidney. So they do enter the kidney through artery. However, they get taken out and go back to the vein. Go back to the blood or the body through vein. So all the things that are filtered, they're filtered inside into the kidney are only the small molecules. So amongst the small molecules, one thing that you have to note is the glucose. Our body just loves glucose. So whenever glucose is taken in, it takes the glucose out or back to the body. Like tries the best to take all of them, like 100%, back to the body. So it goes back to the body through the vein, and then we can answer this question. So in a healthy person, the glucose go into the kidney by artery, and it goes back to the body through vein. So hence the answer is C. Oh, good. Number 26. The diagram shows a synapse where are vesicles containing neurotransmitter molecules found. So this is showing the synapse. So synapse is the junction between one neuron and another. And there is a gap called synaptic gap, or we could call it synaptic cleft. But in this case, it's written synaptic gap, so let's just follow it. So the direction of the impulse is going this way. So A does not contain vesicle, but B does contain vesicles. So vesicles contain neurotransmitters. The substance is called neurotransmitters, and then the impulse drives these vesicles to move, and they fuse with the membrane and then release the neurotransmitters that binds to the receptors in the on the other neuron. And so therefore, I guess the answer must be B, right? Because there are no vesicles on D or anywhere in the post synapse. But this is called pre-synapse. This is called post synapse. And this is the reason why the impulse only travels in one direction, not the other way. Okay, so thanks to the synapse, it keeps our impulse to travel, or impulse traveling in one direction. And the answer must be B. Question 27. Which row shows the state of the ciliary muscles and suspensory ligaments when the eye is focusing on near object? So when we look at the near object, the lens should be thick so they can refract more light and then lens or focuses on the retina. I'll just draw like this. So the lens is connected to the muscle called ciliary muscle. And this is the lens. And ciliary muscle and the lens are connected together by a ligament called suspensory ligaments. Like this. When we're looking at the near object, the lens should not be expanded. So the suspensory ligaments should not pull the lens. Rather, it should just become slackened and leave the lens as it is. So suspensory ligaments should become slackened. And in order to do that, ciliary muscle has to become contracted. So the answer must be A. If it happens the other way around, excuse me, for instance, if this ciliary muscle becomes relaxed, like this, the suspensory ligament will become tightened. So ciliary muscle will pull the suspensory ligament, and it's going to also pull the lens. And the lens, when the lens becomes pulled in many directions, it's going to become thinner. And that's going to be useful when we're looking at an object that's far away. So in this case, it has to be the muscle has to be contracted and the ligaments has to become slackened in order to maintain the thickness of the lens. So the answer is A. The diagram shows a shoot growing towards the light. Which statement about the role of auxin in tropism is correct? In this case, it's phototropism. The auxin promotes tropisms, and there are two types of tropisms. One is called geo or gravitropism. The other one is called phototropism. Of course, for phototropism, the stimulus is the photo, light. For geotropism or gravitropism, the stimulus is gravity. In this case, it's asking about the phototropism, so we'll just focus on phototropism. Okay, so the shoot is bent towards the light in the diagram. So, which means the auxin is moving to the darker side or shaded area, because the auxin doesn't like the light. It goes into the side where there's no light and promotes the growth on that side. So when the tip of the stem produces auxin, it travels to the shaded area and it promotes the growth on one side only, and that creates this bending effect because only one side is becoming longer or elongated. So now the structure is becoming bent. So the auxin will move to the dark side of the shoot, and that's a shoot, or stem, or shoot, and causes cells to elongate. So all the cells on this side are becoming longer, and that's what is called growth. So it's going to go this way. Okay? So the answer is A. Number 29. Bacteria such as MRSA are resistant to several different antibiotics. Some suggested actions for reducing the development of antibiotic resistance in bacteria are listed. Which of the suggested actions are correct? Number 1. Only use antibiotics when necessary. Yes, absolutely true. Because if you use antibiotics when you don't need them, the bacteria that are inside your body may become antibiotic resistant as well for that particular antibiotics. So it's absolutely crucial to use antibiotics when you actually need them. So number 1 is correct. Number 2, only use antibiotics on resistant bacteria. No, why would you use antibiotics on bacteria that are actually resistant? It's absolutely useless. So No. Number 3, do not use antibiotics to treat viral infections. Absolutely true. Because antibiotics are useless, completely useless on viruses, because the function, the mechanism of the antibiotics to kill bacteria is by disturbing the metabolism of the bacteria. However, viruses or virus do not or does not have metabolism. So there's no way that the antibiotics can kill or can destroy. I wouldn't say kill because viruses aren't living things anyway. So antibiotics cannot damage the viruses because viruses do not have metabolism, so it's completely useless. So do not use antibiotics to treat viral infections is absolutely right. So the answer is C. Question 30. The diagram shows a sperm cell. Which part contains mitochondria to release energy for movement? A is flagellum. B is called midpiece. C is the nucleus. D is acrosome. Acrosome contains hydrolytic enzymes that can dissolve the jelly coat of the egg. So D is not correct because it contains enzymes rather than mitochondria. Nucleus obviously does not contain mitochondria. It contains genetic materials, DNAs. Flagellum is therefore swimming, so it needs energy to swim. It actually needs energy to make a movement, and that energy comes from midpiece. The midpiece contains many mitochondria that produce energy by respiration, and then the flagellum can use the energy for the movement. So the answer is A. Number 31. What is the correct statement about lymphocytes? Lymphocytes engulf pathogens? No, the lymphocytes produce antibodies. So, nope. Lymphocyte numbers can be reduced when a person is infected with HIV. That is correct. So HIV is the name of virus, and it causes the disease called AIDS. And HIV binds to the lymphocytes specifically, and then it inserts its DNA. Actually, in this case, it's RNA. HIV does not have DNA, but it has RNA. So it sends out its RNA, and then it uses the RNA to replicate itself. And the lymphocytes becomes damaged. Therefore, the lymphocyte numbers decrease, and also the number of antibodies that are made decreases as well. So the answer is B. Lymphocytes don't produce antigens; they produce antibodies, and they don't transport oxygen. They only make antibodies. So. But in this level in IGCSE, you guys learn lymphocytes as the cells that produce antibodies. But in fact, there are two types: B cells and T cells, and they do have different roles, which you probably learn maybe in next step, like after IGCSE. So we'll just focus on the fact that lymphocytes make antibodies in this IGCSE level, and that's it. Nothing less, nothing more. Okay? Number 32. The statements describe how a protein is made. So this process looks like is called translation. The translation occurs when mRNA is made or transcribed from DNA. So this is DNA, and that's mRNA. So mRNA goes out of the nucleus by the pores, nuclear pores. And then the ribosomes waiting outside the nucleus or in the cytoplasm comes along, and it attaches the amino acids according to what is written in the mRNA. Okay? So, if I look at the options, I'd say D is the right answer. So, the gene coding for the protein is copied in the nucleus. So, the gene coding that's written in the DNA for proteins is copied as mRNA. And then it goes out, to the cytoplasm. So number 2 is correct, yes. And then it passes through a ribosome. The mRNA passes through the ribosome, and then ribosomes attaches the amino acids based on what is written on mRNA. So mRNA moves along, and then the ribosome just attaches the specific amino acids according to what is written in the mRNA. Okay? So the answer is D. Number 33. Which row shows the features of stem cells? So the stem cells are called undifferentiated cells. And they are they're quite powerful in that they can turn into almost any cells within the body. Things like can turn into red blood cells, white blood cells, the lymphocytes, like phagocytes, lymphocytes, and other like liver cells, and so on, muscle cells as well, and so on, can turn into almost any cells within the body. Therefore, it's undifferentiated cell. So, these cells that have specific roles is called specialized cell or specialized cells. So they are unspecialized cells because they don't have any other function. And the type of cell division involved is mitosis, because meiosis is a cell division to make sex cells or gametes. Another name for the sex cells is gamete or gametes. So in this case, it's mitosis because stem cells are not turning into sex cells. Okay? Question 34. Which statement is a correct description of the role of meiosis? So meiosis is the cell division for making sex cells or gametes. So sex cells and gametes are the same things, just different names. And meiosis is therefore to create daughter cells. And the funny thing about the meiosis is that it divides twice, unlike mitosis. So for mitosis, they divide into two, just once. But for meiosis, they divide twice. And the outcome is the daughter cells. There are 4 daughter cells per cell that gets divided, and they are all genetically non-identical. Okay, they're all non-identical daughter cells. And the chromosome numbers are actually halved. So for humans, we have 46 chromosomes, but after the meiosis, each of them contain 23 chromosomes. That's because just before the meiosis, the cell actually replicates its chromosomes or DNAs. So there are increased number of chromosomes here. So they're like 92, right? 92 chromosomes. And then you divide them, and then if you divide them once again, and you get 23 each. So therefore, the answer is B, to halve the chromosome number in the daughter cells. Okay? Cool. Number 35. The photomicrograph shows some red blood cells. At this time, I'm not actually sure whether I should talk about this, because the sickle cell anemia is not actually included in the syllabus anymore. The changed syllabus doesn't actually contain sickle cell anemia, so I think we can just skip this one, because I don't think there's any possibility that you will see this in your IGCSE exam. So we'll skip this one. Okay. Number 36. The events listed may happen in a population. Which sequence may lead to evolution in a population or in the population? So for evolution to occur, there are some criteria. First, there needs to be variation within the population, so that some may be better adapted than the others within a struggle. So when there's a population and some of them are different from the others, and sometimes struggle comes, like the flooding or earthquake, whatever, famine. So within the struggle, when the struggle comes, there are some who can adapt better than the others. They will survive and they reproduce and pass their genes to the next generation. Okay? So, variation is first one. And then the struggle comes. Those who survived must be the better adapted ones. So here we have to decide one, but the struggle happens first, and then some who are adapted, who can adapt better, will survive, and the survived ones reproduce and pass their genes to the next generation. So the answer should be B. Number 37. Which row describes how energy flows through a biological system? So the energy that the Earth receives from the sun is in form of light energy. Of course, it also has heat energy within as well. So the first energy that enters the biological system, in this case it's the Earth, is the light energy. So it's either C or D. And transferred between organisms in biological system. So the first organism that receives the light
energy from the sun is, of course, the producers, aka plants, most of the times. So plants receive the light energy first, and then they get eaten by herbivores like rabbits. Right? So the chemical components of the trees or plants get eaten by the herbivores or primary producer, primary consumer in this case. And the energy is now given or transferred by or in chemical form. So the answer is C already. But let's have a look at the next one. So transfer from the biological system to the environment. So which means these guys, all these living things, biological things, biotic things, they give out something. They give out the energy to the environment. And in which form is it? Of course, it must be heat because they all respire. Okay, so the answer is C. Number 38. The diagram shows a food chain. Grass goes to mouse, get eaten by owl. Which terms describe the food position of the owl in this food chain? So the owl is the third. It's in the third position, right? This is first, second, and third. So trophic level is, of course, third. And it's primary consumer because grass are receiving energy, the light energy from the sun, so it must be producer. And the mouse will be primary consumer, and the owl is secondary consumer. So the answer is B for this one. Number 39. Which method is used to produce lactose-free milk? So lactose-free milk has no lactose, right? So lactose is a carbohydrate. And what is the enzyme that breaks down the lactose? Of course, it's lactase. Using lactose can be broken down into glucose and galactose. Okay? So the answer should be C, using lactase to break down lactose. Question 40. The diagram shows the positions of the 4 farms and the concentrations of nitrate at different points in a river. Which farm is likely to have been using too much fertilizer on its land? So let's have a look at the map and the graph. So it looks like the nitrate concentration is highest at this point. And as you probably, probably know that fertilizer contains a lot of nitrates. So this point must have been affected by fertilizers. And of course the river flows this way, so it must be farm A that used too much fertilizer. So the nitrates all just got transported, or it traveled to the position, and that's where the nitrate concentration is the highest. So it must be farm A. This one's relatively easier one. So all good. So this is the end for the 2020 February-March